in 100 years, I can use this coin to prove the resurrection of Jesus from a location standpoint.
On the burial garment of Jesus, leaving behind marks that indicate the fact of the resurrection.
Dating from the time of Pontius Pilate. In other words, that was in circulation from 26 to 36 AD.
What does the Shroud of Turin, a bronze coin that proves the resurrection, according to this scholar, and a rare silver coin dating back to the time of Jesus have in common? Well, they're all in this video. Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I want to get right into today's video. The intro gives you a taste of the material and the personalities you will see, so let's get going.
I've brought some things that I'd like you to hold, Michael, if I could have your permission.
Happily.
The first thing that I want you to hold, this is very rare. This is not a reproduction. Don't let this get lost in your pocket. This is the temple tax coin. This is 14 grams. This is a full shekel. This would have paid for the temple tax for two. The temple tax was a half shekel. I want you to hold this. That is Tyrian silver, my friend, dating from the time of Pontius Pilate. In other words, that was in circulation from 26 to 36 AD. If you were a Jew or a God-fearer coming to Israel, and by the way, this program is airing at Passover.
Yeah.
So this could not be more relevant. You had to change your currency into the temple tax, which was the Tyrian silver coin, 14 grams. And Jesus has the whip. He goes and he sees the money changers. And it's just like you and I, we would never change our money in the airport because the rates are always bad. It was that times 100 at the southern steps of Jerusalem. That right there, also, Judas has paid 30 of those.
Oh, this is it. This is the coin.
That is the Tyrian silver coin. Also, when Jesus performs a miracle and he tells Peter to catch a fish, and there is the temple tax in the fish's mouth, it could have been that one. It's one of that and my Torah scroll are the two most valuable artifacts that we have in our possession of our organization. I wanted you to hold that because coins were the social media of the day, Michael. This is where, if I have my triplets with me who are 8 years old, and I'm trying to kind of answer your question about the artifacts, and this shows us that what the scriptures say matter. It really did happen. Had we been there that day, we would have seen them. This is
even
not
down to the
make-believe.
Like the quotidian details of this coin. It's amazing how well preserved it is.
I know. That's what makes it exceedingly valuable as well.
Yeah, I have nickels that aren't as well preserved from like 2004.
And that's a full shekel at 14 grams. And so if you go to the southern steps today, to the Jerusalem Archaeological Park, you can hold that in your hand and then imagine in your mind's eye what was happening during Passover that weekend and all of the factions and cultural fractions helping as well. I have another coin. Hold on to it. Just keep it over there by you.
Yeah.
Now, in 100 years, I can use this coin to prove the resurrection of Jesus from a location standpoint.
Okay.
The Holy Sepulchre Church, without a doubt, archaeologically speaking, is the place that where the edicule is inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is the very spot where Jesus walked out of the tomb alive. How do we know that? Well, we need to thank Emperor Hadrian. I want you to hold this bronze coin. That's bronze. That was silver, Tyrian silver. This is bronze.
I can tell because it's got, it's
a
little more.
And this is also very well preserved. This,
patina.
Again, not a replica. This is an actual, from the 2nd century, bronze coin. This is currency. So, Michael, if we time traveled and we went back to the 2nd century right now, it would be a whole different era. And if we're in the city of Jerusalem, we would have to say, Michael, let's get the coins. We got to figure out who the God is. What's this town even called? Where are we? So the coins teach us so much. Well, guess what? Hadrian, because of his hatred of the Jews, and he saw Christianity as just a Jewish sect, he wipes out Israel during the Jewish uprisings. Remember, there are 3 great Jewish revolts, culminating, of course, in Bar Kokhba. But prior to that, Hadrian, this is why I never use the word Palestine. Palestine, which is a pejorative term against the Jews, was coined by Emperor Hadrian, no pun intended, and literally imprinted on that bronze coin is Aelia Capitolina. He razes Jerusalem to the ground. He renames it Aelia Capitolina, the city of Jupiter, rather than calling it Jerusalem. he learns of this early venerated site of this dying, rising God that early Christians who he thought were Jews worshiped. And what does he do? He actually demolishes it. He puts a temple to the god Venus and Jupiter at the site of Golgotha and the tomb of Christ of the resurrection, thereby preserving it for us until Helene gets there 200 years later, Constantine's mom. So I can use one coin to prove the resurrection.
That's called being hoisted with your own petard, I think.
Yes,
when you
that's right.
accidentally preserve the site. Because that's another
unintended consequences.
So I hope you can perceive what's going on there. He's basically saying that this coin points to the historical validity of that emperor's reign. And because of the historical deposit of material, of evidences that we have, we can basically know for certain, in a great irony, that where the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is in fact the place where Jesus Christ was buried. And we also know where Golgotha is, precisely because this pagan ruler decided to basically try to mock Christianity by building other sites on that. I find that to be a very fascinating and great irony. The entire point is that history and artifacts lead us to see that what we are told about history, what we are discovering about Christianity from the archaeological and historical standpoint is real. It is true. I now want to show a clip of Bishop Barron where he's talking about the Shroud of Turin, because you might have noticed that the Shroud of Turin is in the background here. This guy that Michael Knowles is talking to is one of the leading Shroud scholars, and he's going to answer two questions that I have had, and I'm sure that you have had as well, concerning the carbon dating, and also in the biblical account it talks about a separate cloth. So he's going to harmonize those details for us and explain why these are not problems for the validity of the shroud. But first, as I stated, I want to show a clip of Bishop Barron, because Bishop Barron believes in the shroud, and he also theologically he connects the artifact of the shroud with the implication of what it means for us. So let's go ahead and watch what he has to say, and then we'll look at those evidences from the scholar.
What confounded the scientists still does. What are these marks? Where'd they come from? It's very clear now from hours and hours of scientific analysis. The marks that you can see on the shroud, they're not from pigmentation. They're not from any kind of coloration. They exist only on the absolute surface of the fibers of the shroud. Any kind of pigmentation would have gone deeper in. What produced them? Best guess, because no one's been able to reproduce it, by the way. People have tried using all the scientific means we have today to produce that remarkably negative image off of a body, and they can't do it. The best guess from the scientists who've examined the shroud, something like an intense burst of radioactivity, an intense burst of radioactive energy, coming, by the way, from all dimensions of the body, because the shroud is inscribed with a kind of three-dimensionality. Coming from the entirety of the body all at once in a split second, this intense burst of radiation produced these marks. Well, Christians nod their heads and say, uh-huh. The moment of the resurrection, the moment when the body of Christ is brought back through the power of the Holy Spirit to life, and leaving behind, wonderfully, on the burial garment of Jesus, leaving behind marks that indicate the fact of the resurrection.
What is so imperative to see is that the Shroud of Turin is not just a cool artifact to be studied. It's not just a great archaeological find. It is proof of the validity of the historical claim of the resurrection. With that in mind, with that reality in mind, let's pay attention to some of these common objections to the shroud as explained by this shroud scholar.
So then, let me just go back to my 8-year-old self,
Yes.
which still, and I still, maintain a critical eye toward information that's presented to me. But certainly I did then. I was told 1987 or 1988, they radiocarbon tested the Shroud, and the Shroud dates back to the 13th century or
Correct.
something like that. So, come on, where'd that come from?
Absolutely, and it's more fun in the interview if you push back. So, because otherwise I go on autopilot. So I like this because so many of us, we wake up with an allergy of skepticism every morning, and that's healthy. Again, I want to make sure that I learn from everyone, but no one should think for me. This is why I have a ministry called Christian Thinkers Society. We love God with our heart, soul, and mind. So you're asking great questions. And I was reading the raw data last night to prepare for your show, because I got to be on my A game with Michael Knowles. The raw data is rife with errors. I'm not even sure that one of the labs even tested the pinky of fabric that was cut from the cloth. So if I may, above your left shoulder in the top corner is the pinky size fragment that was cut from the cloth to supposedly be carbon dated. Now, excellent thinkers like Joe Marino have published rebuttals to the carbon-14 dating, and they believe that the fragment that was used is contaminated because he claims, I'm quoting Joe Marino, I like to quote the sources, that there's cotton, this is a patched corner, after it survives the fire of 1532. It's a miracle we have the Shroud today. It survived 3 fires, it's been doused with water. So that holds a lot of weight with me. And then we can go down the rabbit trail. 7 labs were supposed to carbon date it, only 3 did.
Right.
The man that published it wrote on the chalkboard 1260 to 390, the gentleman who announced the findings that it was a medieval hoax. He did something that scientists never do. He was anti-Catholic. The carbon-14 data, when it was published, ardent atheists were the editors of the journal. This was an absolute onslaught against the Catholic Church and against people of faith. So if you and I put on the table today all of the evidence that we have in favor, the 102 academic disciplines, and by the way, we've dated the Shroud in 5 other ways that are non-carbon-14 dating. The only thing a skeptic would hold up and wave and say, oh, it's not authentic, is the carbon-14 dating, which has been proven to be erroneous.
Yeah, so what are the other ways that we've dated
this
the
is
Shroud?
Fascinating.
I've
Are
never
you ready
even
to
heard
have
that.
your mind blown?
I am.
So part of the breaking news that you're aware of is 2 years ago, wide-angle X-ray scattering, the Institute of Crystallography in Italy. And I would encourage people, download the Heritage Journal for yourself. Read the data for yourself, and then you decide. The Institute of Crystallography, Jewish burial traditions, which I happen to be an expert in, I can talk all day long about Jewish burial traditions. The Gospels get it right. The way Jesus dies, is buried. That's where I'm saying this comes together. We have other burial shrouds. We have other linen burial shrouds from late Second Temple Judaism in the time of Jesus, such as the Shroud of Masada, dated to AD 70. The invasion of Titus. Think about that. So this Institute of Crystallography, using a new technology called Waxis wide-angle X-ray scattering, compared the degradation, how long has the Shroud been degrading, based on the Masada Shroud, and they showed correspondence, meaning that the Shroud, for lack of a better term, has been getting old for 2,000 years. That's just one of the datings. There's another. The lack of vanillin in the flax. So linen comes from the flax. It comes from the flax plant, and there's no vanillin in the linen cloth. One scholar says it takes 2,000 to 5,000 years for a linen cloth to age to such an extent that there's no trace of vanillin in the chemicals. So, we have the Tarkan dress that is from 3000 BC, 3,000 years older than the Shroud of Turin. Linen will last forever, given the right circumstances, okay? And so there's no vanillin, the wide-angle X-ray scattering, and there's other datings as well that have been widely published. And this is where I bring in my expertise as well, Michael. Carbon-14 dating, 25% of the time, is thrown out in scholarship at academic conferences.
Well, there's actually a related case here, which is, though it also raises questions about the Shroud, which maybe we'll get back to, but the Shroud is not the only burial relic of our Lord. The other one, the other big one, is the Sudarium of Oviedo.
Yes.
And this is the headcloth. But I remember reading that the Sudarium of Oviedo was not does not actually go all the way back to the 1st century, that actually it's just from the 9th century, according to radiocarbon dating. But what's a real rub for this claim is that we have a definitive history of the Sudarium going back to the 6th century.
Yes.
So we can actually just trace it in the documents and in history. So then you say, well, hold on. If the radiocarbon dating was that wrong, and we know with certainty, at least until the 6th century, then why do I believe the radiocarbon dating from the 80s, especially when there were all of these other methodological problems with it?
Exactly. And we've brought the Sudarium, a replica of it, for your studio for this program.
Oh, marvelous. Can we...
Absolutely. Thanks to my friend Doug Powell. It's coming right now thanks to my good friend, scholar, Doug Powell, who has brought his replica for us. This is a replica, and I've never seen this until today, Michael. This is a replica of the Sudarium of Oviedo. And I want you to meet Doug Powell.
Doug, hey, how's it going? Michael? Nice to meet you. Yes, you as well. Thank you. Wow, this is good. Who else did you bring back?
Yes.
Do we have any other relics?
That's right.
Okay.
We brought a museum with us. That's right. That's right.
I should have known, though, that if one travels around with a full-scale replica of the Shroud of Turin, probably he's going to be the kind of guy who has the Sudarium of Oviedo.
That's right.
As well.
That's right.
So, okay, this is supposed to be the headcloth. My first question when I even learned about the headcloth, which, was kept separately from the shroud, and, they kind of have made their ways all around the world. Why would Christ's face be on the shroud? Wouldn't it only be on the headcloth? Isn't the fact that Christ's face is on the shroud an argument against the shroud?
It's not. Doug, go right ahead.
Well, if you read John's account of the discovery of the shroud, they also find the headcloth in a separate place. Mm-hmm. So there are other cloths than the burial cloth around Jesus. And so the fact that there is a headcloth means there's another cloth. And the fact that there's no face on it means that it wasn't in contact with whatever made the image on the shroud when the image got made. So it's separated at some point. And this is what is believed to be that cloth.
And what I might add is, so when was the cloth wrapped around his face?
Yeah.
Jesus dies at around 3 p.m. on the cross. He's hanging there. He's dead.
Yeah.
Jewish sensitivities are such that even the blood that's dripping from the body would want to be collected and not just out on the ground. So that is when they wrap his face with the Sudarium, is when he's still on the cross, coming down from the cross. That it remains on his face until they bring the body in the tomb where it is taken off and Jesus is wrapped with the shroud. Does that make sense, the timing?
That does make sense. I've just never figured it out. And that's never been presented to me before. But yeah, I suppose that would make sense because then you would also say, well, hold on. If it were just on the whole time, or if it was just part of the wrapping, well, why isn't there
an image,
3D image, like there is on the shroud? Why isn't there one on the Sudarium?
And Doug, I wonder if you would talk about the correspondence of the blood type. Are you ready to have your mind blown further, Michael?
I am.
Okay, well, what you're looking at here is it's oriented so this particular stain, you can see there's 3 areas of stains. You have this one, and this one. This area right here was in direct contact with a face that matches exactly the face on the shroud. It's a 1-to-1 correspondence, and if you line up the nose, if you register the nose, then this kind of concentrated area of blood is right around the mouth and the beard area, and you can see how it kind of hooks around like the beard does. And then this vertical area goes right down the bridge of the nose, and this would be on the forehead right here. This epsilon shape right here is the edge of this, and then you can see this blood stain corresponds here, and there are a number of other ones. That one corresponds there, and so if you do an overlay, like if you outline this and you put it right onto that, it's an exact match in size, not just in size, but in blood type as well. First of all, scientists have been able to recreate this stain right here by taking a head, a glass head that is filled with blood mixed with pulmonary edema, which is the fluid that's generated in the lungs during asphyxiation or other kind of torture or duress. And that's the blood mixture that is on here, and that's also the blood mixture that you see in different places on the shroud, like here. It's 6 parts pulmonary edema to 1 part blood. So that's what's coming out of the lungs. And so that's what's coming out of his mouth, of the man who had the sudarium wrapped around him. So it matches like that. It's also type AB, which is also the type on the shroud. It's also postmortem blood.
Right.
And type AB is the rarest blood type. It's about 3 times more common in Mediterranean Jews than it is in Europeans.
The Eucharistic miracles,
Same.
the type is always AB.
AB, pretty amazing. So the idea is that the sudarium was affixed to the back of the head here, and if you look really close, you can see these holes where pins were put through to the hair. There is a ponytail shape funnel right here of his hair, and this is where it would have affixed to, and this butterfly shape fits right onto the ponytail. And then you can see these blood, little pinpoints of blood wounds match this exactly, and then it would wrap around the front, so it gets around to the front and makes contact with the face. But it's not wrapped all the way around the head because the face, scientists have figured out, is lulled forward and to the right like this. So they can't get it all the way around when he's on the cross. So they double it back, and that's what creates that stain. So now it's folded back, and they have determined his head was in this position for about 45 minutes to an hour. And then the body is taken down and laid face down with the feet slightly elevated, which causes the blood to go down up the nose or down the nose and pool onto the forehead, which is what makes that. And he's in that position for 45 minutes to an hour. And so that gives enough time for Joseph of Arimathea to go get permission to bury the body. And then the body is flipped face up for about 5 minutes. And there are actually finger marks where somebody has reached over the back of the head to pinch the nose shut to hold the blood in and the body's in that position face up for about 5 minutes. And so if you've ever been to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the space between Golgotha and the tomb is more than enough. You know, you can cover that in 90 seconds. And so that's where all the stains, that's how to make sense of the stains here.
So, okay, we know the sudarium comes from at least the 6th century. No one disputes that.
It's been in Oviedo, Spain since Oviedo was founded at the end of the 8th century. Yeah. And so it's been in, the documentary evidence is that it enters Spain around 711. Okay. Ahead of the Muslim invasion.
Where was it? Do we know where it was before 711?
Well, the documentary evidence actually matches the pollen evidence. And you'll get to the pollen evidence on the shroud, but there's pollen on both the shroud and the sudarium. And the pollen on the sudarium is from, Oviedo is in the very northern part of Spain, kind of in the center of the coast, about 15 or 20 miles inland in the mountains of Asturias. So there's pollen from around there. There's pollen from around Toledo, right in the middle of Spain. And then there's pollen from North Africa, probably the area around Alexandria, which is where the documentary evidence says it was after Jerusalem and before Spain. Right. And then there's pollen evidence from Jerusalem.
So all of this, at the very least, we would have to say, not only from knowing where it was in the church, but even beforehand, the pollen and the documentary evidence, that we're firmly in antiquity.
Oh, yeah.
And call it whatever, the 6th century. Though many people would say, no, it actually goes to the 1st century.
Right.
But I guess my point is, if we know for a fact that we can place this in antiquity, and the skeptics of the Shroud of Turin are arguing that it's a medieval forgery, then how do the images match perfectly? Did some medieval forger know about the sudarium, maybe, and then just, even if it were possible to create the image through artistic techniques, just manage to match it perfectly without anyone figuring it out?
That's the fascinating thing. This may be the key to in the case against the medieval dating of the
Right.
shroud. The final piece of the puzzle is connecting these two things, because we know of the existence of this definitely 600 years before the earliest date within the radiocarbon dating. So once we show this correspondence, and it's like I said, it's an exact match, that totally blows apart the idea that the shroud was created 600 years later.
And Michael, I want your audience to appreciate, I know of no other program that has a Shroud museum quality licensed authentic replica along with the Sudarium that we're comparing right now that's going to live forever. This is so helpful. I wish when I began learning about the Shroud, I could have seen a video with two Shroud scholars comparing the two. This debunks the carbon-14 dating.
Okay, so there's two takeaways, I think, and they both have to deal with this term. They both deal with this idea of correspondence. So in concerning the carbon dating, there is a correspondence between the age of an authentic linen from the time of Jesus and its degradation. There's a correspondence between that and the Shroud of Turin. So it seems that we can make sense of the Shroud of Turin as being as old as the time of Jesus. The second correspondence is that there are two claws witnessed to in the biblical account, and there is a correspondence between blood type and pollens and the such. There's many different correspondences between the blood type, the stains, the marks, with the two linen claws that are said to be within the biblical account. That is just absolutely mind-boggling to me. Now, I want to go back to conclude with what Bishop Barron is saying. These relics, these artifacts, are really just testimony to the fact that Jesus Christ really did, in fact, rise from the dead. There is nothing more historically verifiable than that fact. And as I record this, we are approaching Easter, and it is a great reminder for Christians that their faith is solid. It's on sure ground, not just because of the apostolic tradition that we have preserved for us through the scriptures and in the church, but also the fact that as we go and study what the scriptures actually say that time frame was actually like, we get more and more evidence that the scriptures are true, and therefore that only produces more faith within us, or at least it should. So I want to ask you, how is your faith? Do you believe in the historicity of the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead? In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, the Apostle Paul makes it clear that the entire Christian faith is dependent upon that reality. We are dependent upon the reality of Christ's resurrection, not only so that we can prove that the Christian faith is true, but it gets all the way back down to you and your salvation. If Jesus Christ did not rise from the dead, you will not either, which means the grave will be your definitive death, and you will not have any hope of a future resurrection, nor is heaven real. These are big issues, y'all, and I want you to be thinking about it. I want you to find great evidences for your faith, and I want you to see that Christianity is Christ and it's about Him, and if you find Him, you will find eternal life. All right, that's all I have for this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe. Remember that Christianity is Christ, and without Him, there is no Christianity. Happy Easter, and I'll see you in the next one, y'all. Peace.